Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Hi, and welcome to our next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today, I have Ankita Poddar. Hopefully that was as close as I was trying to get a few moments ago. You're joining us from Dublin in Ireland, and you're the Senior HR Business Partner at AWS at Amazon Web Services. So welcome.
Hey Ross, I'm so glad to be here. It's a nice way to have ended a very busy Thursday, as you can tell, because you and I are on video. Our listeners may not be able to see this, but I am working from the office and I have been stuck within these four walls. So really looking forward to this.
Yeah, good. And, you know, we were just talking about, is it the last act of the day? Well, it might be last act of work, but of course it will be going home, cooking dinner and all of the normal things that we do. But your real passion and all things about HR and behavioral economics, you've been writing blogs, writing lots of stuff. You're also the host of a podcast called HR Bandit. I enjoyed a couple of the episodes in doing my bit of research to find out, not into sports, played a bit of badminton or various bits throughout the course of your life. But in more serious note, People Matters in India has identified you as one of the 15 emerging HR leaders in the country, and many other top lists, from SHRM India being in the top 50, top 20 influencers in the country by ETHRWorld from the Economic Times India. And the last 6 years have been in Amazon. So an amazing journey that I want to dive into. But the first thing I want to start with was, what was your favorite subject at school?
Oh my God. Okay. It's a tie. This is an easy one. It's a tie between math and physics.
Okay.
I loved math in school, but I hated engineering mathematics. And I can talk endlessly about math, but the moment you enter engineering mathematics, all numbers disappear and then it's just alphabets. And I'm like, this doesn't look like anything I recognize. So yeah, there you go. Math and physics. I love physics too.
I read a book years ago called The Goldilocks Enigma. I don't know if you've ever read it. And I think the author, is it Paul Allen maybe? And it's this juxtaposition between quantum mechanics and space, all sorts of things. And I remember at the time just really profoundly affecting my thinking. And one of the things I remember in it is that an object or a piece is never in a single position, and it's always in motion. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, how does that actually function? Where does that look like that you can't actually have something that it's all in motion? So yeah, just a bizarre things when we read so many books, what sticks in our head of physics. In terms of then going from a love of favorite subjects of maths and physics, how did that then start in your first career journey from that kind of education perspective?
I've said this many times before, and I'll say it on this pod. I'm what I call myself an accidental HR. I never planned on this profession. Like, if you asked me right up till I went into business school what I wanted to be, it would be something else. I went into business school wanting to do finance, was terrible at it, did my internship in marketing, just realized I hated sales. And in my head, to be a good marketing person, I had to start in sales. And after obliterating everything else, including computer science, I was just like, the only thing left in my business school as option of subjects was HR. So, but I have no regrets. As you can tell, I work as an HR professional during the day. And even in my free time, I'm only talking about HR. People think I'm crazy, but I like it.
And there was something that you mentioned in maybe some of our prep work and things about, this balance of what is work, what does that look like? And for you talking about, actually, I found it, maybe it was an accident, depending on our beliefs, our philosophies of whether there are accidents or they just show up when we weren't expecting. The thought that just ran through my head was about games. And you mentioned in a question of, why haven't we turned work into a game yet? And I got the impression just from what you said there, that maybe you already have, in terms of, well, if you're doing it in all of your life and in your spare time, is that how you've designed it for yourself? So what's your thinking around work and games and how they might merge and mix?
To start with, I am terrible at games. Well, except a few. Like, I love board games, but I'm not really good at them, and I can't play a single video game to save my life. Wordle, however, is my new passion. The reason that question is constantly on my mind is twofold. First, a lot of people spend a lot of time playing games in their leisure time when they're not like watching TV or something else. And you have these movies which, transform life into a game, and work is an essential component. We've tried introducing gamification into certain aspects, like hiring in some organizations as a game. Learning has turned into a game in certain aspects. And then you look at work and you look at games, people enjoy and achieve a lot via games. And I proposed the idea of turning work into a game a few years ago, and it kept getting rejected over and over again. And I cannot imagine why people have such a hard time thinking of the things we have to achieve at work as something that we can achieve while thinking of it as a game.
It's interesting, isn't it? Where I think we all have history, we all have baggage of what we come in as a preconceived notion of things, and work, it's serious. It's where you go to do serious things. It's called a profession. It's professional. We have to behave a certain way. And we have these playbooks and structures that are about, let's mitigate risk, let's manage what goes on, and let's, as much as possible, predict the best outcomes and be as efficient and productive as we can. And yet, when the board changes from being a backgammon board to a chessboard to actually now there's no board there anyway, so what are the rules? What's going on? We're actually in a place of discovery. We're in a place that's unknown. And it does feel a bit more like we're revealing and discovering and experimenting, which is more like a game. And I can see a lot of the sense in thinking like that. But the challenge, I guess, is old guard of thinking this is the way it's done, this is what it is, and no, we have to provide value in a certain way, we have to earn in a certain way, rather than reimagine that. So where have you seen anybody really doing that well, changing it, not just in those fringes, recruitment or learning and development, but in other general areas that you think, wow, they're doing something really interesting?
I haven't. I think the closest that it'll come to is the metaverse. But think of it this way. Games are very similar to work. You have structured rules within and boundaries within which you play. You get value out of it, even if it's like tokens, leaderboards, and different things. And then you have to keep achieving things to move ahead. Otherwise, you stagnate or you get killed or something like that. So it's the exact
same thing by another name.
As work. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people have fun doing that in a different world. You just change the context.
It's a branding and marketing job, right?
Exactly.
So we just need to rebrand the definition of work and merge it to what we perceive as game, because it's the same thing underneath the label, I guess. That's very
easy peasy, yeah.
Very interesting. And you mentioned the metaverse, and I think it's going through this phase of where, you mentioned, not a trend for 2022. And that was because you expressed in one of your podcasts, which are great, by the way, is
thank you.
that this phase of learning before we're actually implementing or using something. And I guess that happens for all aspects, whether it's technology or whatever it may be, a behavior or an action, is we need to figure out and learn it, and then find where is it useful? What does it enable us to do we couldn't do before, or what we were doing a bit better? And so where do you see it for you of the phase of how long will it be in learning? Will it always be in learning mode in the metaverse? Or is there ways in which we can start to implement some value early with some quick wins before we see the end of 2022? Or will it always be in learning mode for the rest of the year?
There are three sections of the society as I see it right now, or even within HR. There's one section who's very excited about metaverse. They're already going out and checking where it can be used, how it can be used, and like touting great things about it. There are people on the other end of the spectrum who believe that is not how life should be lived. We were not meant to live in a virtual world when there's a real world out there. There are people in between who are in the learning phase more than the ones who are like big fans of the metaverse. I am struggling between the class of people say that's not the, like, that's a waste of our life if we're like sitting all day within four walls staring at a screen, which I'm doing anyway all the time, and between the experimenting. And I think I don't see it as a trend in 2022 only because that section who are fan are still discovering it, and will have to take people in the other two sections along with them to actually implement it in any form. Till then, it'll be pilots, experiments, and so on. But if it's just work, I understand, which is the game part of it. But if you're doing it throughout your life, like unless, I don't know, we run out of oxygen or something and we have to stay indoors, that's all right. But otherwise, I would prefer, and I think you're already seeing this, everyone prefers meeting in person, prefers going out versus staring at the screen all day. If we had a choice, we probably wouldn't.
It's interesting. I think it's got a lot to do with context and the leaning in and leaning out. Too much of anything makes somebody ill, right? Whatever that may be. And we need this variety of novelty and of knowing. And I remember a few conferences that I've been to over the last years, some where they've had it completely in a virtual world, in spatial web. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I met a company, a real estate company, that have a global team of about 500, and they have been fully operating in a virtual spatial webverse. That's where their offices are. That's where they go to work. It's not, oh, let's go and have a meeting in Zoom or in the metaverse. No, they go to work into this place for the entire time. And I found that really fascinating, that you're going to have across society a variety of ways of how people do things. And I think that's what's beautiful about it, isn't it? Is that we can have choice. We can say, no, I want to come and hang out. I want to come to the office and I want to have lunch together. I want to have a coffee. To I want to write on Post-it notes and stick them on the wall. To I don't want to get in the car. I don't want to have to go over to Dublin to record a podcast, but we can connect in and Zoom. So I think these opportunities give us choice, give us freedom. But the challenge and both opportunity is then, like you said, with engaged, what are the rules? And we're still figuring them out. We don't know when to use it, when not to use it, when it's best and when it's not best. But flipping it a little bit now in terms of where these decisions are being made for each individual. It might be, oh, I buy an Oculus because I want my, kids to go and have a bit of a play and experiment, or I'll pop in, versus I'm a leader. I am responsible for creating an environment where people can thrive, where they can become the best versions of themselves, either by accident or by design. all above is good. How do leaders need to maybe think about this from your view of where there's a plethora of choice, a plethora of technologies. How do they deal with all of that noise and get work done and get a job done? What's the balance that you've seen in that?
I think like when I think of how a leader needs to determine the environment, one of the top things is this environment fit for purpose? Which essentially means, and I'm going to take one tiny segment of what they should be thinking about, and that's, is this going to be inclusive of all kinds of people who I want delivering this piece of work? Right now, when you take the metaverse, for example, now, do I know that people of all diverse perspectives can be an engaged part of the metaverse, can visually challenged people be as immersed in it as people who have neurologically diverse, like autism and so on? Are people who are physically diverse being able to come in, right? And if it ticks all those boxes, then I know this is one feasible mode of operation. The one thing I don't want to do is, in the whole excitement of something new, eliminate an entire section of society, right? And this isn't just people who are differently able, but it's also people who come with different perspectives. Now, if the metaverse includes only people who are technologically adept and open to the idea of interacting virtually, I am eliminating another section of the society. Now, I understand not everyone will accept everything. So I need to see where is, like, I make up a percentage in my head, but say what is the most inclusive method of doing so, till I can convince the other segment to come on board, or till technology evolves to be inclusive of all kinds. And I say this because I am someone who is a big fan of interacting in person with people over virtually. And then I was speaking to someone who is neurologically diverse, and I was telling them, what's easier for you? Is it in person because you're picking up other cues, or is it virtual? And she said, well, I struggle picking up environmental cues anyway when I'm having a conversation. So virtually, we're all the same because no one else picks up half the cues because we're all looking at each other on a video. So I feel like I'm picking up the same kind of cues as everyone else. And it's a bigger equalizer, where I've seen other people who, with other disabilities, find it much more challenging. So I think even though we say ID&E, inclusion, diversity, and equity may be a fad or a trend right now, I think it is a very important deciding factor.
I think that's a really great point about, we might have this desire to be diverse, to be inclusive, to allow engagement, but it isn't easy. Whichever route we pick, there are challenges. If we say, oh, it's in person, well, who can travel? Who can't travel? If we say it's on Zoom, well, what time zone? If we say this, oh, well, does it allow for this disability or this disability? So I think there is innately a challenge in that by design, that if we make everyone able to, well, that's the game called Earth and the World and Planet, right? That all of those things exist, and at the fringes where we go in a room that isn't an echo chamber, that where it looks different, we don't understand and we don't like what's being said, that's where creativity happens. But it also is where, unfortunately, bad things also happen as well as great things. We have a very unfortunate event going on in the world at the moment that is, in effect, what was one that isn't one, wants to be one again, and different viewpoints on how that could be achieved. And to hold a space in our mind of two opposing thoughts is really hard, and for work and leaders, when we look at these things, can we actually do that? Or is it an oxymoron? Can we really have all of these components, or do we just need moments of it, the best we can do, and have more moments like that? What's your what's your view if you had a magic wand or a thing of how do we get better?
It's really hard to answer that question because you're right? No matter what we do, currently, I have hope in the future things will change, but whatever we do currently ends up eliminating a certain section, no matter what, right? And I think you are a leader because you are in the best position to decide what's the best balance to strike, right? And you will inevitably be wrong because in an ideal world, we're like, oh, we should be inclusive of every single diverse perspective that exists. And we know that it's a challenging thing. The only thing we can do is be iterate till you get to the right product, feature, service that you're building. And I think that's why we have select leaders in the world. Not everyone's a leader because you are in a position to know your product best. You are willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time till you actually get to the right place. And you need to make that trade-off on what's right for you and what's not.
So I'm interested in your thoughts and advice on, so if we do that and we get these diverse inputs and then we require a convergence of those to make a decision, and we need to adapt, right? We need to change or stay the same. All of these things that we go through this phase from growth, collapse, to thriving, of that's the way we had our product and proposition yesterday, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's currently here. Where's it going to be next? What can we do if the information that comes in looks alien? If it doesn't look, which good diverse stuff should look alien, shouldn't look like what is currently there. How can we make sure we're not just disregarding it because we don't recognize it? Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our ability to adapt, is when something is shown to us that looks alien and it's unexpected and it's not what we thought, that we don't dismiss it too early. How would you help people through that kind of process, whether it's in their own career? I've got this job, that bit over there looks so alien, so I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to take it in, or a product, or whatever it may be. How do we help that? I don't know what we would call it. We would call it acceptance of the alien information?
I can think of three things that one can do. One is this concept from improv, where you say yes and. So whenever you hear an alien idea, you force yourself to say yes, and this is how we can add on to it, right? You try and avoid saying no till you absolutely can't take it anymore, right? So that is one. The second thing is conversations. Like, find people who think different than you do and speak to them. Speak to them with an open mind. And I think which is why you'll see increasingly a lot of leadership teams are trying to get in as many differently thinking people as possible, right? Because they challenge your thoughts. When you have a conversation with open mind, you may stick to your point of view, you may change it. And the third thing is pilot it, like experiment with it and see what the outcome is. And then make a decision. I think if you try doing these three things, it should help.
I love that. I love that idea of, especially the piece in the middle is the more we have it, the more we will normalize different. So that muscle that allows us to have all these other inputs will mean that we can rewire. We can rewire easier, and alien looks less alien when we see more aliens, I guess. So in whether that's an action or behavior is to immerse ourselves in those. And the last thought that you had of these experiments, where would you start in a broad thinking or broad term of this experimental mindset or these pilots? What are ways in which that could work well?
There's some people who are naturally more open to experiments. And you'll have to correct me if I didn't get your question right, but you can start experimenting in any space. You can start experimenting by cooking a different dish. like get used to the experimenting way of thinking, with the little things that don't really take you back. And I think one way of being open to experiments and trying new things is not to take things too seriously. I think a lot of times we take work very, very seriously, which is also another reason I'm trying to talk about the whole game thing, right? We have a sense of artificial urgency, like the company will collapse if I take a week off, things like that, right? And when you automatically stop taking things very seriously, it leads to curiosity. It leads to say, I wonder what this button does, right? And when you, and I've seen people who look at their entire life that way, right? They don't take anything seriously. Well, they take, like, they have the right mix. I'm not just saying it's all a joke. They come with the right mix. So they encourage curiosity. They encourage, like, just naturally thinking of everything like an experiment.
I like the differentiations. You used a couple of interesting words there of the difference between, say, a joke or play. You know, Lego has Lego serious play, right? So we can be serious at how we play, and being playful and being all in for that, rather than, oh, it's just a joke, I'm doing that piece. No, I'm using this, I'm choosing to do it, and I'll immerse myself to that too. Hey, I'll turn up and see what happens. I'll be open-minded. And that's the beauty that we can hold, hopefully, in our work environments, space for those things to coexist, for people to be open-minded. They can go in and discover something. Hey, I didn't realize HR was my thing. I went in to try and do this and it was the last on the list. No, I've written down my list at 18 and this is what I'm going to do at 30 and this is what I'm going to do at 50 and no one's going to deviate me from it. The world can have space for both and every shade in the middle. In terms of trying to put some predictions on, and I know predictions is an area, listening to a couple of the podcasts that you had, that you quite enjoy that thought experiment of what could be next. What could be next for us? What could be next for our people we care about? Could it be that the meal tonight's going to be a different meal? You know, what is it that we're moving and shifting around? If you had to see out, say, the next, actually, I'm gonna frame this because my thinking has just shifted actually as we've been talking. So my own coach is a chap called Dan Sullivan. Okay. And he talks about a 25-year plan and to always have this 25-year vision, but then when you're in action mode, you'll chunk it down to 90 days. And every 90 days is 1% towards that 25-year plan. So it's a different way of thinking large, but acting small. And he shared with us, here's my next 25-year plan. And he's a guy in his mid-70s. And he still thinks that way. He's prolific in his value, in his purpose, in all of these things. And so when I just want to frame these prediction thoughts as I come to it, that we're generally not great at, you know, the short term. We always think it's going to, you know, what's the quote? We overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but underestimate what we can achieve in 10. I think that's the right way round. And I'm just curious as to, if you looked at a longer lens, what would be some of the predictions or the hopes around work that you would like to see happening in, say, 5 to 10 years time? What would that look like for you?
5 to 10 years time. I think the world at large could be a little more of an uncomfortable place, right? Mostly because if I look, okay, let me also phrase this a little differently. I'm going to take your cue. I had a conversation with someone a while ago, and the person asked me to predict or to put in place a practice that will stand the test of time. And I was looking back at our HR practices because that's a profession I know best. And some of our practices are over 25 years old. Are they the best practices? No, but we've found this huge resistance to change. And then in the past 2 years, which is everyone's favorite period of time, there's something happening all the time. Like you think you're done with the pandemic, and then something else happens, and you think that you're done with that, and then something else happens. And you're constantly living in discomfort because you're just like, this is like, I've just gotten used to this. And to be fair, I spent all of 2021 languishing. So I do think 5 to 10 years now, things are going to get a lot more uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And then we just have to build, like, I'll come back to what I said earlier. We just need to take it a little less seriously so that we just used to say, okay, this is not what I'm used to, but it's fine. Like it's just another day in life, right? So I think I love the term AQ because we do have to just get used to being uncomfortable. The second thing is gone.
Please carry on.
Yeah. The second thing I would say is we will see ourselves engaging much earlier in the life cycle, right? A lot of organizations are hiring more. Like the number of people in the world are increasing, the number of people organizations need are increasing, and there are no longer enough people to steal from other companies. And you have to start engaging from, I don't know, organizations engage with colleges. And I think that's still not early enough. Like we take machine learning, for example, there's such a shortage. Like, I don't even know if someone in school knows whether they want to go into machine learning. You can call this influencing, and organizations that are best at influencing this, a 10-year-old on the profession they want to take, are going to have to will get ahead. So I think work will start much, much earlier. Like you can change careers at any point of time. That's going to get easier, but you're also going to start thinking about careers a little seriously because of just the environmental pressure of needing more professionals much earlier. So a 10-year-old would say, this is what I'm going to do when I'm 15, this is what I'm going to study. It can change, but I think organizations will have to start targeting or creating the fact that what do you want to do in life, creating a sense of purpose much earlier than what they do now.
I find it interesting, this challenge where how would we even engage with them when what we want them to be able to do, we don't even know what it is yet. There'll be things that we can envisage right now, and we say, oh yeah, the shortage in this and this, machine learning, this, and we go, yeah, we're going to need some of them, so let's go further upstream, get them ready. And by the time we get there, maybe all we'll have to do is have a conversation with AI, and then it'll create these things. We won't need programmers. We'll just have a conversation, say, I want it to do this and this and this, and the way it does. Same way we brief humans in things, maybe we'll brief the version of Alexa and Google in the future that says, hey, can you build me a website? I'd like this to happen. Can I have a SaaS system that does this? I want it to assess AQ. I want to do this. I want loads of science and research behind it. No, actually, can we do this? And let's have all these voices from professors and other people that we would normally brief other humans to do that. Maybe we'd be briefing and having the conversation that ran the leadership team is the virtual person, not a human person that's doing some of these things. So I think it's going to be incredibly hard. And there was a profound thing, I think it was a conversation with Tony Robbins and somebody else that I was listening to, and he said, well, so many people are obsessed with what's going to change, what's going to be different. Maybe we should have better obsession with what's going to stay the same. What's still going to stay the same? Do we still want to connect with people? Do we still want to have a belonging? Do we still want to be loved? Do we still want to be nourished? And there's some fundamental things that I'd like to think won't change, might expand in a period of time. And therefore, how do we build this opportunity that maybe this go get educated, then go work, to, oh, then we'll top you up with a little bit of professional development as you go, to, life is at a different moment. And maybe education starts for some people at 50 or 70 or whatever it is, if we're suddenly then living to 120 and we've got jobs and work in all different flavors that we might, see in a sci-fi book or film, that we go, yep, I'll have that new knowledge, in goes the matrix. Who really knows what's going to go on with this challenge? And for some, that fills with excitement, some it's fear. So if we go into these earlier upstream, are there any things that you think could be the types of skills or the types of things? Is it curiosity? Is it questions? Is it creativity? What is it that you think are going to be, what should my grandchildren, I've got 6, by the way, what should they be really focusing on and learning right now from your perspective in work to be ready? What is that?
First, I would not have guessed you have grandchildren. So that took me by surprise. On your question, I'd urge you to think of it like this, and we can have an hour-long debate separately on whether it's ethical or non-ethical, but think of building loyalties when they're in school, right? Now, what the organization does can pivot based on what's the theme of the moment. Like, am I going to learn new skills? I'm going to, like, today I build hardware. Tomorrow I could be building robots, spaceships, whatever, or just go into education. Like, what an organization does can pivot to stay current. But because you mentioned Gartner earlier, right? If Gartner came to school and started influencing me, and I'm just like, that's it, they paid for my education, they've told me what to do, they're giving me nice gifts, and that's the organization I want to work for. So at any point of time, when the organization decides to pivot, or as it's pivoting through the 25 years, it continues to influence my life choices, my education decisions, and so on, so that when I'm ready, and I don't even know whether work will stay work in 25 years, but that's where I'm going to end up. Like, that's just like the military does that, right? Like, people grow up saying, I'm going to be an army man, I'm going to fight for my country, right from like kids play as soldiers. Now, if that has such an influencing power, think of organizations as countries, and them saying, I'm hoping that organizations think for a better earth and a better future. But then you start going in much earlier in the pipeline and start building that kind of loyalty. Now, I'm not talking about the ethics of it and everything else. That's a separate discussion. But I'm saying, if an organization was future thinking, if they were building a 5-10 year plan, that's where I'll go.
Yeah, it reminds me of certain thoughts of, there's these tribes who consider their decisions on the timeline of 7 generations. How will what I do today affect 7 generations down the line? I'm not planting this tree for me or my grandchildren, it's a number down the line. And if we think of organizations, because we have a short-termism, I think, politics think in short-termism, most companies think in short-termism, to really think large, to be able to then, let's just move ethics, to the side for the moment, because we've only got, a few minutes left of the thing, is to say what we stand for. What is that? What is the area in which we're passionate about? Is it about people? Is it about animals? Is it about energy? What are the base principles, and how do we want to show up that is leaving it better than we found it? How we do that and what we do is going to meander and evolve many times. But if I have a connection with why they're doing it and the space that they're in, maybe I can go there. One of the other things I've been thinking about is the Hollywood film model, right? So you get a theme, and then you have hundreds of people orbit around that theme. So you have the person who shows up, and it's this collective that works together, does the project, and away they go. And there's not this kind of sense of, oh, I need loyalty or I need ownership, that no, that actor only works for that one. they'll come back and do another one if they liked the experience with that team. But I think this whole social contract we have about, oh, we need retention, and oh, the retention is now an issue because it costs money, because the design we have at the moment is it costs so much to get them in, to get them onboarded. Then when we lose them, when we're trying to keep employee mobility, move them there, and we get all the life cycle going, to what if it was like Hollywood films? And the whole structure allows it to come, go, create for a year or two, go back and move around, and that wasn't seen as a bad thing. Oh, they've stopped acting in that show, in that piece, in that thing anymore. But no, they've done all of this. When they come in, they bring that experience from all of those places. So what if we can, it's not designed that way at the moment, that I could come and go, hey, I want to hang out at Amazon for the next 3 months. And then I want to hang out over here for another 3 months. At the moment, it'd be difficult for me to provide value and for the company to provide value, because it's, oh, what's the systems? Where do you save stuff? How do you name stuff? All of the technical bits, let alone, so who does what here? Where do I get this answer? Whereas in Hollywood, I think it works pretty well, because the end result's pretty cool and they repeat it. So I've often thought about, even in my own entrepreneurial journey of businesses that I've started, evolved, exited, all of these things, is I've built a very loyal team. Some have come with me on many journeys, and we love hanging out together and creating cool stuff. But I wonder what we might have missed out on if people could just come in and hang out, and it wasn't such a, I've got to take 100 CVs through to this stage, to this stage, to this stage, and I got to make the bet right, and what if it goes wrong, and all of those things. To just be more game, more open. We can have a special character turn up in that room and they have a play. So I don't know, there's no question in there. There was just some thoughts. I wonder what your take on that would be.
I love how you push me to think on the other end of the spectrum each time I pose an answer. And I think I'm really enjoying this conversation because of that. And I had to say that. I'm going to loop back to your answer. You asked for 5 to 10 years into the future. And there are 2 directions a company can take, right? There's a direction of the Hollywood style, right? Where you have everyone come in together, leave. And then the other end is of, I'm going to go back as organizations as nations. Now, if you work for the army, you're not going to fight for one country today and fight for another country tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way. Like, then you're never going to, no war is ever going to be successful, or even better, no war is ever going to be fought. But then you need to decide. You can't have a mix of both, but usually if you see the way organizations operate today, they are heavy on one end, lighter on the other. It could be a mix of whatever, right? So Hollywood won't have that kind of loyalty where it retains everyone else. And then organizations which have extremely high loyalty will probably not have people who are going on and working with different organizations. So there are 2 paths to choose from. Now, I'm going to make a prediction here, and I could be very, very wrong, but I don't think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to go to the other end of just gig economy. I think there's still, in certain tasks and jobs, you already have, but to a very large extent, people are still issuing patents. They're still looking at people as their competitive advantage. So the focus is on retention and everything else because of the cost that goes into doing all of that. We still haven't built that ecosystem where you can do that easily. And that ecosystem is not built by 1 or 2 organizations going the left route. It does when there's a whole bunch of things who move. I could be wrong. That's my prediction.
You've made me think about a couple of things there. IBM still last year outfiled every other company on their patents, right? And that's still this sense of competition, this sense of talent war, the language, all of these things. No, you're mine. I'm going to treat you so well you don't want to leave, to, oh, if you leave, that was a failure. Our metrics are built in that way, to this full gig economy and these, floating around that both bring knowledge, but take knowledge, so that's why we don't want retention to be bad, because we lose knowledge and it costs both cash and time and all of these things. I wonder if there is an adaptation in the middle where a bit, when you were talking about the military, they go to different deployments and they go to different areas. And within a company, one of the biggest opportunities, I think, is, the employee mobility inside, so that we can have the opportunity to, retain, lose, have gigs inside the multiple pods all around, and all of that moving, so that that's really encouraged, really celebrated. And instead of it warring against each other, it's an internal one. And therefore the risk is less, because you're still got that knowledge that's being leveraged throughout. And you've got the opportunity of still being belonging, still being connected, but new voices coming in each time you shuffle it up and then re-deal. So I think that could be quite interesting, rather than, I know you stay in HR, you do this and you get really deep in that, to being broad, having moments in different areas. Could still be in HR, but it could be in different countries, as you've done, in different divisions, or we can go and try on the clothes and say, what does it look like when I try to do this role? What do I mess up? What do I create? Because a lot of innovation comes from that naivety, coming in and not knowing how it's been done before and saying, well, okay, so that's how you created psychometrics before. You did it this way. No, I want to do it through a conversation. I want to do it through conversational AI. How do we do that? Or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's a fascinating thought. So my final question, because I'm conscious of time, is, and I know it's going to be a good one for you, listening to a number of your other podcasts and our conversation today, and it's related to curiosity, it's related to learning, it's related to experience. And you almost mentioned something, and I thought, oh, that would be a great answer already. But my question is, when was the last time that you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Oh, I want to say every day. I was kind of thinking, did I do something for the first time today? I found myself a new place to sit down today. The benefits of agile working. So that's the first time I did something for the first time, is sit at my boss's desk and pretend it's mine.
Absolutely amazing. I love that. And our environment really impacts our sense, our feeling, posture, thought process. If anybody's ever hasn't read Blink, it's a really interesting one about thin slicing and thinking. And the example was, write down what it feels like to be a teacher and then go and play Trivial Pursuit afterwards. Sit in your boss's chair and then see how you make decisions and act. I love that one. So great to speak to you. It's been a real journey of thought for me, expansion of my own thinking and ideas. And I'm confident our listeners will have gained exactly the same, because when I'm enjoying and learning, I think they are too. So thank you for giving that opportunity and playing all out with us on our podcast on Decoding AQ.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQ-Me assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.